Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Tuck session at MBA Spotlight. My name is Jemima, and I will be your host. It is also my pleasure to present to you Tim Neal, who's our Assistant Director of Recruitment at Tuck. We also have with us Sarah, who is also on admissions at Tuck. We will begin with a quick overview of the full time MBA program and critical information that you need to know to be successful in your application. After that, we will open it up for questions and answers, and we will try to answer as many questions as possible. For everyone in the audience, we have a great way for you to engage and post your questions. On the screen to your right, there is a small tab that has a Q&A bubble. That's the perfect place for you to post any questions you might have for Tim and for Sarah. And you can also upvote the questions that you would like to be answered. I will be picking the most upvoted questions during the Q&A session. And now I will turn it over to Tim. Thank you, Tim, for joining us. We are ready for your presentation.
Thank you, Jemima. I hope everyone, no matter where you're listening in from, is having a good day or a good morning. Thanks so much for taking a little bit of time. I know that these are back to back, and so you're probably getting a lot of information thrown at you very quickly. And what I'm going to do is just briefly chat with you about talk and hopefully lay some of the groundwork to get some of those basic questions answered. So definitely tune in, and then we'll open things up to the Q&A here in roughly 10 minutes or so. And thank you to my colleague Sarah Baker, who's fabulous and will be answering most of your questions on the back end. So starting a little bit about me, I'm Tim Neal. I've worked at the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth for the past 3 years. I've been in higher education for the past 12. I know it doesn't look that way, but I have. I love this job because I get to meet amazing students from all over the world. I know I'm not seeing you on camera right now, but I would imagine that most of you are eager and excited to begin this MBA journey. And I want to just touch on sort of the who, what, where of Tuck, just to kind of give you some sense of where we're located, what our program's made up, and so forth. So we're the Tuck School of Business at Dartmouth College. Dartmouth is located in Hanover, New Hampshire, roughly 2.5 hours from Boston, about 4.5 hours north of New York City, and about 2.5 to 3 hours south of Montreal. We're nestled right on the edge of Vermont and New Hampshire in the upper valley. So there's a lot of words associated with our small little town. We're the smallest of the top MBA programs with roughly 295 students in each class. We're a 2-year full-time in-person program. And I mean, you have your entire life to live somewhere else. Why not live in this picturesque place for 2 years? And really, it's only 20 months, right? You see from the bottom there, Baker Tower faces directly towards Tuck. So if you go straight up the middle of Tuck Drive, Irving is that center building, sort of right here. I don't know if you can see my cursor circling it. And then Tuck is over here on the right. The Thayer School of Engineering is on the left-hand side. So that is a shared space. We call that the north end of campus. But as you can imagine, while there are only 295 students in your class, there's 295 in the class ahead of you. There will always be a class behind you. And then you have the undergraduate college, you have the medical school, you have the engineering school. And then on top of Tuck's class, a third of each class that we bring in will have a partner with them. So this is not just about putting your life on pause for 2 years to advance yourself. It's professionally. It's about you personally and professionally advancing your family, advancing your partner's life. This is a place where we feel that you can have a personal, connected, and transformative 2-year experience and beyond that. As Dean Slaughter, the Dean of Tuck, he's in his, I believe, 3rd term. They're 4-year appointments, has really created a wonderful, inclusive environment centered around our mission of developing wise, decisive leaders who better the world through business. And we live by this mission that we it doesn't necessarily matter what sort of background you come from. There's a, a baker in our second year class who's going to become a consultant at Bain, and her husband's in the program as well. There are dancers and artists and engineers and doctors and nurses that are all doing this program. What we care about is that you take the knowledge from this general MBA program and apply that to whatever you would like to do in the world through business. And so we live by these values of having a personal, connected, and transformative 2 years, not only the place, but the people that are coming to Tuck. You'll notice from our class profile, the majority of students come from financial services and consulting, and going out, it is consulting is our largest industry by far, with financial services being right behind that. The large lion's share of financial services is investment banking, and the third industry is actually tech. And so let me just go back for a second. Look at that. When you ask, is it hard to recruit? When you ask questions like, how does the location prevent me from getting a job? Look at our employment report. It doesn't lie. We have one of the best employment reports out there when it comes to placing students into a full-time offer. 95% of our students will go and have a full-time offer within 3 months of graduating. That's our 5th year of being at 95% or higher. 100% of our students will do a summer internship between year 1 and year 2. And the starting total compensation for the class of 2023 was $205,000. It's $175,000 base, $30,000 sign-on bonus. But backing things up for a second, when you come to Tuck, you're starting in August. Your first year is 4 quarters or terms, however you want to refer to them. We call them terms. So you'll start your first term, your summer term, that will go from August to October. You'll have a break. Most students will go on a career trek to New York City or Boston or Texas or the West Coast for tech, spending roughly 3 days connecting with different companies and firms while you're in a different city. You'll come back and you'll start your fall term that will run from middle of October until, as our first year students are currently, running until middle of December. Those students will have a little break for the holidays and return in early January. Their third term, their winter term, which is also their lightest in courses, it's very heavy in recruiting, will run from early January until March. You have roughly 10 days off in March, and you'll come back for your final term of your first year, and that will run from March until May. And then all of our students will do a summer internship after their first year. Every one of our students will do a first year project in their 4th term of their first year. So your first year is extremely packed. You start with a heavy core classes. There are no majors or concentrations at Tuck. You all are going to be taking the same core classes. And then from that, it will start to dissipate. And by your winter term of your first year, you can start choosing some of the electives. So every single student graduating from Tuck is quite literally living their own pathway, their own concentration, their own journey, and filling that with courses that they feel like will be more beneficial to them in the long run, whether that be in entrepreneurship, operations, strategy, healthcare, and the list goes on. You can literally go to our website and see all of the electives that we offer. Electives could run for the full term. They could be a mini, which is half a term, or they could be a sprint class, which is roughly 3 or 4 sessions, 90 minutes, graded pass fail. So there are lots of different learning modules and learning. There are different ways of learning, right? And we want you to feel comfortable doing that. Now, on top of it, your second year, you'll come back in September, and that will be 3 terms. So a term shorter than your first year, and you'll finish in May, and you'll go off into your full-time role. Most students will fulfill their global requirement in their second year through the Tuck Go office. I'm leading a group of students to South Korea, 31 Tuck students in the beginning of December with a faculty member. And there's roughly 10 trips happening in December. And then in addition to the fact that we don't have majors or concentrations, we do want to give students a little bit of a deeper insight into certain industries. So we have 6 centers set up that allow you to dive in deeper, connect with second year students or visiting professionals that are coming back. So Center for Private Equity and Venture Capital, Center for Digital Strategy, Center for Business Government Society, Center for Healthcare, Center for Entrepreneurship, and the Rever Center for Energy, Sustainability, and Innovation. Those 6 centers are meant to be an arm and extension from the curricular component of your MBA and the co-curricular. So they'll also help students with case study, with recruiting, with putting on conferences. We just hosted a real estate conference this past weekend. Before that, we hosted a women in business conference. We host a private equity conference every year. Dartmouth is the birthplace of artificial intelligence. So we host a huge artificial intelligence, not this year on campus. This year it was actually in San Francisco. So we were able to host a much larger audience. So that's a small taste of the curricular recruiting life. I would encourage you to also dig through our website a little bit more and to ask questions when we get to that portion. Now, switching gears, heavy pivot, admissions, just for a second. One of the common questions we're asked in these sessions is, what are you looking for? Who's successful? And it's quite literally on our website: smart, accomplished, aware, and encouraging. Those 4 admission criteria need to show up in all components of your application. We know you're not going to be strong in all 4 categories. We don't expect that of you, but we are looking for evidence of smart and impact and how you're curious and excited by challenges, what you've accomplished in your job and your personal life, awareness, knowing who you are and where you would like to go, and how is Talk best suited to get you there. And encouraging, how are you celebrating and supporting others, especially in the world we're living in today? How are you doing that on the regular, not when it benefits you? So those 4 admission criteria are really, really important that you take some time. Huge shout out to the Tuck 360 blog. I'm sure I don't have the chat pulled up, but I'm sure Sarah's already talked about this or will talk about the Tuck 360 blog. It breaks down each one of these admissions criteria, but in addition to that, it also talks about how to craft your resume, how to work on your interview. So really, really, really important piece of the pie. I would encourage you to look at the Tuck 360 blog because it's not just relevant to Tuck, it's relevant to applying to MBA programs. Now, finally, I just want to end with some logistics. Those are our rounds, interviews, and applying to Tuck. So you can apply to Tuck 2 ways: directly on our website through the apply, our application, or you can apply if you are a US citizen or permanent resident through the consortium. If that doesn't apply to you, you can just ignore the consortium piece. We have 3 rounds: round 1, round 2, round 3. You choose the round you would like to apply. But for round 1 and round 2, we have 2 deadlines. That is based on when you submit your application and all your supporting materials. So for round 2, that's our upcoming deadline, we have a guaranteed interview deadline of December 2nd. So if you submit your round 2 application by December 2nd at 5 p.m. Eastern time, along with all of your other materials, that includes your letters of recommendation, it includes self-reporting test scores, your transcripts, everything in your application by December 2nd, you are simply guaranteeing yourself an interview. We interview all students that we're considering for admission. If you are okay with not having that guaranteed interview, you can apply by the regular round 2 deadline, which is January 6, 2025. We will still read your application and determine if we would like to invite you for an interview. We're pretty friendly with our interview invitations. However, there are some students, it's clear cut, yes, no, if we're going to move forward. So there is some risk if you don't apply by the guaranteed interview deadline, but we don't want to encourage you to rush your application. That is something we see often. Round 3 is our last deadline. That's March 26th. There are no guaranteed interview deadlines for that. Interviews are done all by second-year students that we hire in our office. There are roughly 50 of them. They're all virtual, or a few of them will be on-campus in-person interviews if you choose to sign up for one of those. And you'll receive an email invitation where you can choose which route you would like to take. We don't have a preference if it's virtual or on campus. And we don't have a preference if it's a guaranteed interview deadline or a round 2 regular deadline. It's up to you. They're all going to be read at the same time. And then finally, staying connected with us. Opening an application will invite you to join our Slack channel, connecting with our ambassadors. This is a great time to do it. First years are in the middle of finals, so they're wrapping up their second term. But second years are off. They're on break. They are doing global trips, so they might be a little bit more available to converse with. The blog, as I mentioned earlier, and of course, feel free to email us if you have other questions. Now, with that, I'm going to end things there, and we'll see what questions you have.
Okay. Thank you so much, Tim. I think that presentation was very brief and concise, very insightful also. So now we will move to the Q&A session. So I will just put up the most upvoted questions on the screen so everyone can see, and then I'll give you the opportunity to answer them. Okay, so the first question is from Sanjit, and he or she's asking, does a great GMAT score plus a strong resume or letter of recommendation or essay offset a relatively low GPA?
These are questions that are tough to answer. Relatively is the key word here. I don't know what relatively means, but I will say we're looking at your full story. So this question asked by someone who is 1 year out of college or out of undergrad, so they only have about a year of work experience or less than that. No, that's not going to offset that undergraduate GPA, because you have less work experience. You have less time working out in the environment to build up your quantitative skills, to build up your professional skills. Someone who's further out that has 10 years of work experience, we're going to look at that GPA a little bit differently. However, your grade point average, we're not going to recalculate for those international students that did not graduate from a US college or university. We won't recalculate that down to a 4.0. We'll look at the class profile from your school to get a better sense of the scale that your grade point average is on. We know that some of you are attending university for 3 years versus 4. We know some of you are on a 100-point scale or a 7-point scale or a 10-point scale. We're just trying to look at it in the context of how well you've done. 3 years or 4 years at an undergraduate, taking heavy quant courses, great. That is going to help. We want to understand the full story. So this would be a chance for Sanjit, for you to explain in the optional statement. You don't have to put a full essay there, but give us some context around why there was a quote unquote relatively low GPA and what's relative, right? So give us some context around how you attempted to remedy that during your time in undergrad.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, I will move that to answered and we'll move on. So the next question is from Tom V. The questions, okay, 3 questions actually. So first question, with the increase in the number of applications, what are the 3 key aspects to focus on to get an admit, especially for overrepresented international students? Second question is, can you talk about Tuck's marketing division? And the third question is, what are a few mistakes to avoid?
Sure. I'll talk briefly about market. There are marketing classes at Tuck that you will take in the core and elective base, but there's not a division or a major that you would need to complete a certain number of courses in order to become a major or focus within that area. And I think that's the beauty of the general MBA, is that you're going to graduate from Tuck and employers will know that what they're getting. It's this breadth of experience in the courses that you're going to be taking. You will be challenged on how to be good leaders, and how to think about your problems from an operational standpoint, from a strategy standpoint, from a consulting standpoint. So I would encourage you to just take a look at some of the electives and core classes that are within marketing. Um, yes, I think you might be referring to the recent article about the Tuck article about our increase in applications. Um, I don't think that things have really changed for us for those four admission criteria that I showed earlier, and I'll show them again. It's incredibly important that you can demonstrate smart, accomplished, aware, and encouraging in all aspects of your application. I think one of the things that we often see from students that are from overrepresented international markets. I see you're from India. That is a market where we see a lot of applications from. And I think one of the things is we see candidates from certain regions that go online and try to sound like everyone else. And my urge to you is that you need to remember that you have your own unique story. This is awareness, the criteria I'm talking about now. And you can't have your story neatly fit into what other students who were admitted in years past um, have. And so it's really, really important that you take the time to really clarify your goals. What's your short term professional goal? What's your long term professional goal? I think one of the things we saw with candidates is that they would put an A and B short term goal and an A and B long term goal. Those are some red flags for us. It looks like you're not really clear about what your goals are. That's to answer your third question as well. But awareness is chock full in the application. It's essay one, it's essay two as well. So knowing why you want to get an MBA, why talk, why now. We see a lot of candidates that really skim over the third question in the first essay, which is why now. Those are some ways that you can distinguish yourself among candidates in a large market like India, or in the whole entire prospect pool as well, or the applicant pool. I hope that answered some of your questions.
Yes, it sure did. Okay, so we'll move on to the next one. The next question says that this is from, okay, Anurag says, how do scholarships vary from R1 to R2?
So across the board, our scholarships range from 10,000 up to the full tuition. Average this past year was roughly $30,000 to $35,000. They don't vary in terms of amounts. So if you present a strong application in round one, you would get equal amount of money in round two or in round three. We always over award scholarships because we know students won't be accepting our offer, and we just keep data to make sure that we're not going too far over our budgets and our means, because we want to make sure that we can maintain this personal, connected, and transformative MBA experience where you have one of the best ratio of career advisors to students among any of the top MBA programs. That's important, right? Getting a job after you graduate. Now, here's some simple math. We award seats in round one that we will no longer have available in round two. So that's just simple math, and I encourage you to think about almost just flat out ignoring like the strategy around admission and just applying when you're ready, applying when you can present the best story of yourself, and when you have the best total application, not rushing it, not thinking, oh, if I apply round one, I'm going to get more money. That's not the case.
Okay, thank you. So there's another question from Tanish. Tanisha says, what are the classes like? Case study based, lecture based, teamwork based? What are the peers like?
Great question. Most of the class, I mean, it depends on the function of the course, right? Some of your accounting classes um, can be, very cut and dry, straightforward. Like, this is the content we need to learn. I'm going to lecture at you for a brief period of time, and then the professor will break you all into your smaller groups in class. But then a lot of the classes at Tuck are case based. So you'll be given a case, you'll work with your study group on that case. Everyone will have a study group for your first term. We will, the program office, I think, went through 12 iterations, making sure that we had diverse study groups. You'll get that study group on day one when you arrive. And then you'll have that study group all the way through until October. In your second term, you get a new study group. And then new this year, what we're trying is we're going to have our students go back in the winter term to their first year or their first term study group. So you get to go back to the first group of students that you worked with. And then in your final term of your first year, you'll also have your first year project. That's extremely team based. You get to choose the project you work on. You get to choose the team that you work with. And we just have a few requirements. They have to be diverse in terms of professional experience, citizenship, and gender. So you can't just be working with a bunch of the same folks as you. You need to mix it up. Yeah, and so for a lot of your core classes, there will be a mixture of case and lecture-based courses. You will have your study group, and then each of the classes are broken into sections, roughly 4 sections of 70 students taking the classes at different times. So you won't have 70 actual students in your class, but outside of your study group, that's 60 some other students that you could connect with in your section on a topic or whatnot. But it's an incredibly collaborative environment. I mean, it's super small not to be, right?
Okay, nice. Thank you. We'll move to the next question. Says, if I've already submitted my application with my current GRE score, but end up retaking the GRE, can I submit the new score? And if it is higher, would it be considered in my application review?
Yes. However, those new scores need to be submitted before we release your decision. Because once we've made our decision on your application, which we'll go through and read every single file, roughly 3 people will look at every single application. Not roughly, at least 3 people will look at every single application. If you submit new scores and you're admitted, we'll reconsider them. However, if those new scores come in after we've already released your decision, that enters a whole new ballgame, and those will be reviewed on a case by case basis. So I always encourage candidates that if you do have new test scores or promotions or changes to your application, since you've already submitted your application to Tuck, congratulations, that's a big feat. Go into your Tuck portal, and there is a little uploader where you can upload new. It's a form that you would complete. You can upload new test scores there.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on. Next question. Tanisha again says, how is Tuck helping students pursue careers in futuristic industries such as climate or energy or AI? This is with regards to job opportunities, curriculum, and additional experiences.
Yeah, I mentioned the artificial intelligence conference earlier. This is our second annual that's being hosted by both Dartmouth and Tuck. That is a massive conference. You can just Google the Tuck Artificial Intelligence Conference to see the keynote speakers. Students often ask, like, how can I get connected with alums, and like what Tuckies are in these fields already? And I say, just Google the conferences we host, because we're bringing back these professionals, and you can see who the keynotes are and what presentations they're speaking on, and you can see their the companies that they work at or found it, right? And so you can see like the real estate conference, that's more of a niche area. We don't see as many students that are interested in real estate. That's, I would say, something that's growing. And so this is a great opportunity for you, whether you're interested in artificial intelligence or climate or energy. I would also encourage you to look at the Rever Center for Energy Sustainability and Innovation. Tuck received a $50 million gift a few years ago to create a summit around bringing the private and public sector together to tackle big, challenging questions around climate, energy, and artificial intelligence. Our sprint classes, so those are super quick 3 or 4 classes, 90-minute sessions. There's one on artificial intelligence and consulting. There's one on climate for sure. There's one on there's money, morality, and meaning. So more of a philosophical one. So these sprint classes are held up because of market changes or interests among students. One of our first year students has already presented a topic on having a sprint course on women in athletics and sports. So we have a few Tuck alums that are working as like the operations leader for the Seattle Mariners and other teams like the Red Sox, bringing back those industry professionals to sort of put up a curriculum around that. But that's one way we're able to be nimble because of our size. We offered 26 sprint courses last year. And we'll continue to offer them within climate, energy, artificial intelligence. And then what else is newer down the road? There's one on the cost of war. So lots of different sprint classes that we can offer. And then that just spills into recruiting opportunities, what types of individuals are coming back to co-teach those courses, the conferences that we put on, and then take a look also at the centers that I mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move to the next one. It says Abbas says, what are the most significant factors that go towards the scholarship decisions?
Yeah, so first you have to be admitted. So the first part of this is we're going to review everyone for admission first. We're not even thinking about scholarship at that point, right? I see the laughter emojis popping up, but it's true, right? Like you have to think about admissions first. And so we will review your application. I mentioned 3 different people will look at each one of our applications. If you are one of the fortunate ones to be admitted, then we will then review only those students that are admitted and make scholarship decisions before we release your overall admission decision. So coming up roughly 3 weeks from now, we'll be sitting in a room for about 4 or 5 days, just making our final admission decisions. And then after that, we'll sit there and look at all of the data of the class. What are the average scores, GPAs, quant courses? What was your impact? What roles have you had? All of that gets factored into going towards scholarship. I would say significant factors, test scores, grade point average are the 2 big ones. And then everything else that goes into your application as a whole. So I'll give you this common example. We see students that have really high test scores and really low grade point averages that aren't admitted, right? If they were eked out and they were able to be admitted, their grade point average would probably be higher than significantly low. And they just because you have a strong test score is not going to guarantee you a scholarship. So that student who has a stronger test score than maybe their peer might not be awarded a scholarship. So test score, yes, important. So is the grade point average and your overall undergraduate performance, but everything else is going to go into that.
Okay, thank you. Very insightful. Let's move on. We have another question. I would like to know what kind of diversity there is in Tuck, as I am from an architecture background trying my stepping stones in MBA.
Awesome. Glad you're thinking about an MBA. This is where I think your goals will really play an important role in crafting your application, being able to make sure that you, since we have it up here, I'll show this slide again. Being able to really demonstrate your awareness. Diversity in the class, we're 45% women, roughly 15% are first generation college graduates. and about 10% of the class identifies LGBTQ. You can actually see on our class profile now previous universities that students have gone to that have matriculated at Tuck. There are number of different career professionals. Just because you don't come from a consulting or traditional financial services background doesn't mean that you can't do well. Just thinking about, okay, given your architecture background, given this work experience, what do you want to do with this MBA, and how much knowledge have you gained by reading through our website, by talking to current Tuck students, by talking to alums? What pathway do you want to take in order to achieve your goals, your short-term and your long-term goals? So I hope I answered that question.
You did. Thank you. Okay. The next one says, what unique international programs or partnerships does Tuck offer to expand students' global perspectives and industry expertise, particularly in markets like India or Southeast Asia?
Yeah. I mentioned that we have a global requirement, part of the curriculum every single student has to fulfill in order to graduate. We also have an ethics requirement. Everyone will have to take at least one course in ethics. There's a few different pathways. You could take a course at Tuck that goes deeply enough into the intercultural elements of a certain country, like China-US relations, taught by Dean Slaughter. There are roughly 12 or 13 GIX trips. Those are called Global Insight Expedition trips. I'm going to South Korea with 31 students in December, but there are trips to Australia, India, Taiwan, Argentina, Chile, France, Copenhagen. And then some of our trips in March go to Kenya and other parts of Africa. So all of our students will go on at least one trip if they so choose, or taking that course at Tuck. We also have about 20 to 25 partner universities where students would go and do what would be like an undergraduate study abroad, where you spend a full term away from Tuck taking classes at like London Business School or Hong Kong Business School. So it just depends on what type of experience you would like to have. Because students are doing their core classes in their first year, that's why they're not going on those global trips. The first time a first year student could go on a global trip would be March of their first year. The vast majority of those students will go in their second year. And then, I'm thinking about one of our faculty members, Sarah. I don't know if the article is still out there about our VR goggles. One of our faculty members during COVID, who happens to be from India, sent a group of videographers over to India to film different villages and cities so that our students could literally put on the goggles while in Hanover and walk through and get an experience of being over there when time wasn't allowing that to happen, and that course is still being taught. So some options.
Thank you. There's another question here. Jerry says, how do I qualify for the GMAT waiver?
The short answer is on our applying to Tuck page. There is the GMAT or GRE test scores tab. You can click on that and you can read all of this. There's a form on our website that you need to complete prior to the deadline that you're applying under. So make sure that you are staying on time. That's the first piece of it. You need to first meet our English proficiency requirements. And in order to qualify for an English proficiency waiver, you have to have graduated from an undergraduate college or university where English was the primary language, primary instruction. And so if you do not qualify for that English language waiver, then you're not eligible to apply for the GMAT or the GRE test waiver. Okay. If you do qualify for the English proficiency waiver, meaning you would not need to submit the English proficiency test like TOEFL or Duolingo, then you can go further and submit proof of why you feel like this evidence of a quant background, the test scores, GMAT or GRE, where would that be made up? Your professional life, your academic life, certifications you've done, where would that be made up? And then those are individually reviewed by our executive director and our director of candidate evaluation. They go through every single one of those by hand. They read the evidence you submit. You only get one chance to submit that. And if approved, great. We would not require you submit test scores. If not approved, we would still require at least one test score be submitted and self-reported with your application. Like I said earlier, applying to Tuck, that's where you can see all the fine details. Make sure, first and foremost, that you meet the English proficiency requirements and that you submit your waiver form on time. Otherwise, you won't be approved.
Okay, thank you. We're running out of time, so I think we'll take just two more questions, and then I will allow Tim to talk about the application waiver process for those of you who are asking. So the next question that I would take is from Tanisha again. She says, could you please tell about the most common mistakes made during the application or interview process?
Yeah, I think not being clear, concise, and consistent in your application. This applies to your goals and how you craft your goals. And what do I mean by clear, concise, and consistent? Concise, we'll start with that one. That's pretty easy. We only give you a small number of words to answer these questions. So making sure that you're taking full advantage of that, but not abusing it either. We don't need additional letters of recommendation. We need what we're asking for. So keep it concise. Consistent, you all have a resume, you have work experience, you have an undergraduate degree. How are you building off of that? Right. And what are those goals that you're crafting? How do they build off of your past history? And clear, there are levels of clarity in your application. You can be that person that's super detailed and says in your goals, I would like to be this MBB consultant at would insert whatever consulting firm you might be interested in. Great, that's clear, right? It's concise and it's consistent, hopefully, with their past work experience. And if not, they're going to take the opportunity to explain to us in other parts of their application why they're pivoting, right? Um, there's also the clarity of really vague, like I would like to go into consulting uh, in a rotational program. Okay, just be prepared to really give a little bit more detail, possibly in your interview. I think with interviews, students don't treat them as conversations. I think they get really hung up on how they sound rather than just speaking authentically about their lived experience. Here's the real kicker: you all are the only experts on you. So you should be able to tell a very clear, concise, and consistent story in the application and the interview. Remember this, though. Your interviews are being conducted by second year students who were in your shoes 2 years prior. And so they are interviewing from a lens of empathy, right? They get it. On top of that, the only piece of information that interviewers have is your resume. So don't assume that they have it all or know it all about you. And so you might have to give a little bit more background, but be aware, as I'm not doing so well right now, in your response is going too long, so that the interviewer doesn't get to treat it like a conversation. So that would be my clear, concise, and consistent, and make sure that you're still telling your story to create a conversation with us.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So we'll just take one more question that is the most upvoted question of the session. I will put that on stage. Says, is there any application fee waiver? If yes, how do I apply for it?
Yes, there is. And there are about 20 ways that one could qualify for an application fee waiver. Um, I'm sure my colleague Sarah has dropped in the applying to talk page many, many times. On the Applying to Tuck page, that's also where you'll see our dates and deadlines. That's where you'll see all of the requirements from the application to letters of reference. The last drop down is called application fee. On that tab, you can see all of the ways that you could automatically receive a fee waiver, like if you were a member of the US military or you're a first generation college graduate, and then other ways that you might need to apply for an application fee waiver and submit proof of that. One would be like you are attended Forte launch, you completed the Forte launch program. That's something that you just have to show proof that you completed the Forte launch program, and we would apply your waiver to your application. It's very important, though, that the first thing, you have to have an application open in order to apply for a fee waiver. So go and create an application. By creating an application, you'll also get invited to our Slack where you can ask questions like these. But we hope that you actually look at our website first before you ask questions. And then you can go on and apply for the fee waiver once your application's open and see if you've been granted one or not. So that's the easiest way. I will say the one common one, we do not offer event-based application fee waivers. There are about a dozen to 20 reasons that you could apply for one. And I think you should if that's something that's important to you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think that our time is up, and I believe we've answered most of the questions that were raised. However, if we did not cover your question, feel free to reach out to the AdCom via the email which Tim presented earlier. They will be happy to answer any questions that you might have about the application process. So we will end the session now. There are many other sessions going on for the rest of today. So it was lovely to meet all of you. Thank you, and do have a great day.
Thank you all. And thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.